The scream still echoes in my head. It was a Saturday afternoon, the kind that smelled like rain and pavement. My 6-year-old son, Noah, was playing with his little red ball near the end of my parents' driveway. I was helping Mom clean the porch. At least that's what she called it. In reality, she barked orders while scrolling her phone, criticizing every movement I made. "Careful," I told Noah as he chased the ball closer to the street. He smiled back at me, that dimpled grin that always made my chest warm. Then came the screech, tires skidding, the crunch of metal against bone, and that sound no mother forgets. A child's scream cut short. I ran before I even realized my feet were moving. Noah lay on the road motionless, blood spreading across his forehead, his little arm twisted wrong. "Oh my God," I gasped, dropping beside him. "Noah, baby, can you hear me?" He whimpered faintly, trying to move. I turned toward the house, shouting, "Dad, Mom, call an ambulance. He's hurt." Mom appeared at the door, her expression flat. "What happened now? Please," I screamed. "He got hit. He's bleeding." Dad walked out behind her, holding his beer. "Always drama with you," he muttered. I looked back at Noah, my voice breaking. "He needs help. Please call 911. Mom folded her arms, tilting her head like she was deciding what to wear. "He's fine. Kids fall all the time. Mom, a car hit him," I shouted, pointing to the skid marks on the road. "He's bleeding from his head. Please." She rolled her eyes. "Then take him yourself. Why should we waste money on an ambulance? You can't even pay your own bills." I froze, disbelief clawing through me. This isn't about money. He could die. Dad chuckled darkly. "Maybe that's what needs to happen. That kid's been ruining our lives since he showed up. Always crying, always needing something. You can't even hold a job because of him." My stomach dropped. "He's your grandson," I whispered. "Barely," he said, taking another sip. "He's a mistake that keeps costing us." Mom glanced at her phone. "Stop overreacting. Clean him up. If he's still breathing, he'll be fine." I looked down at Noah, his lips pale, his breath shallow. I tore off my shirt, pressing it against his head wound, blood soaking through instantly. "Mom, he's losing blood." I screamed again. She smirked. "If you cared that much, maybe you should have chosen a better father for him. Now deal with it." That was the moment something inside me cracked. Not in panic, but in fury. I scooped Noah into my arms, his weight limp and terrifying. "Fine," I hissed. "I'll do it myself." As I turned, Dad shouted after me, "Don't bring him back here when he dies. We don't need the cops on our property." Their laughter followed me to the street, sharp, heartless, echoing through the drizzle. I ran. My feet hit the wet asphalt, my breath coming in gasps. Cars slowed. People stared. But I didn't stop. My son's blood was on my hands, literally. And the only thing that mattered was getting to help. I burst into a nearby store, yelling for someone to call 911. The cashier's face went pale, grabbing the phone instantly. Within minutes, sirens wailed in the distance, and my knees buckled as the paramedics rushed to take Noah from my arms. "Ma'am, you did good," one of them said as he checked Noah's pulse. "He's breathing shallow, but we'll stabilize him." I stood there, drenched, shivering, staring at the ambulance lights reflecting off puddles. Somewhere in that blur, I realized my parents hadn't just abandoned me. They'd abandoned him, too. When we reached the hospital, the doctor told me Noah had a mild skull fracture and needed surgery. If you hadn't acted fast, he said, he wouldn't have made it. I sat there numb, my clothes stiff with dry blood. My hands shook, but not from fear anymore, from rage. That night, as I watched Noah sleep in his hospital bed, I replayed their words over and over. "Let him die. He's ruining our life." They'd laughed while he bled. I stared at the steady beep of the monitor, whispering to myself, "They'll learn what it feels like to beg." And for the first time in years, I meant every word because the woman they thought they broke The weak daughter, the mistake, the embarrassment was gone. And what they created instead was something they couldn't destroy. That night, I didn't cry. I planned. I planned how to make them feel what? It's like when help never comes. When mercy is just a word someone else deserves. And when the time came, they'd finally understand what it's like to beg for life and be met with silence. 3 days passed before my parents even called. Not to ask about Noah, not to apologize, but to complain that the neighbors were gossiping. Mom's voice came through the phone like poison wrapped in sugar. "You really embarrassed us, Claire." Running down the street screaming like some lunatic with that kid in your arms. "Everyone's been talking." The Johnsons said, "You looked like a crazy person." I was sitting by Noah's hospital bed. When she said it, his head was bandaged, his tiny arm resting in a sling. The beeping machines reminding me he was still here, despite them. "Mom," I said, my voice shaking. "He almost died. You left him there." She sighed like I was being dramatic. "You're being cruel. You know your father has blood pressure issues. We couldn't handle the stress. Anyway, what would an ambulance do that a little rest couldn't? Rest? He has a skull fracture." "Oh, stop exaggerating. You always twist things to make yourself the victim. That's why nobody takes you seriously." Before I could respond, Dad's voice cut in from the background. "If you had just watched your brat instead of gossiping, none of this would have happened. Don't call us again until you've learned some respect." And then the line went dead. I just sat there staring at the phone, the walls of the hospital room closing in on me. My mother's perfume lingered on the sweater I'd borrowed earlier that week. I could almost hear her laugh in my head. That cruel, careless laugh that followed me through childhood. "Mom?" Noah's weak voice pulled me back. I looked down and forced a smile. "I'm here. Baby, I'm right here." He blinked, tears pooling in his lashes. "It hurts. I know." I kissed his hand. "But you're going to be okay. I promise." In that moment, something hardened in me. For years, I tried to earn their love, cleaning their house, lending money I didn't have, taking every insult quietly because I thought family meant forgiveness. But family doesn't laugh while your child bleeds. Family doesn't tell you to let your son die. So when Noah finally woke up the next day, stronger, whispering for his toy car, I knew exactly what I had to do. I didn't go back to their house. I didn't call to update them. I blocked their numbers and moved to a small apartment near the hospital. Noah needed therapy, rest, and peace. Things my parents could never give. Weeks passed and the bills piled up, but I didn't care. I worked double shifts at the diner, slept on the couch beside Noah's bed, and saved every receipt like armor. Every dollar I earned was proof that I could survive without them. Then one afternoon, as I was getting ready for work, my landlord knocked. "There's an older couple downstairs asking for you," he said. My chest tightened. I didn't need to ask who it was. When I stepped outside, they were there. Mom in her pearl earrings, Dad in his pressed shirt. The perfect suburban act. But their faces, they'd aged. The arrogance was still there, but something else, too. Desperation. "Claire," Mom said softly, as if she hadn't spit venom at me weeks ago. "We came to talk." I crossed my arms. "Why?" "You made it clear what my son means to you." Dad cleared his throat. "We've had some financial trouble." I was hoping. "Stop," I said, stepping closer. "You were hoping what? That I'd forget how you stood there while he bled? That I'd pretend you're good people?" Mom's lip trembled. "You don't understand. We were scared. We didn't mean." I cut her off. "You meant every word. You said let him die. And you laughed." Her face went pale. "We didn't know he was that hurt. You didn't care," I said, voice low, calm, terrifying even to me. "And now when you're the ones bleeding financially, you come here. You think I'm still the girl who begged for approval. But that girl's gone." I turned and started back toward my door. Dad called after me, his voice breaking for the first time in my life. "We could lose everything. Claire, please. I stopped but didn't turn around. That's funny, I said coldly. You didn't care when I almost lost everything. Their silence told me they finally understood the shift in power, the consequence of cruelty. But I wasn't done yet, because what was coming next wasn't silence or avoidance. It was justice. Slow, deliberate, and unforgettable. Mom showed up again 2 weeks later. This time, she didn't wear pearls. She wore exhaustion, cracked foundation, red eyes, and the kind of trembling hands I'd only seen when she was holding a cigarette during a storm. Dad wasn't with her. She stood outside my apartment door, clutching an envelope. Claire, she whispered, please let me in. I didn't. I stepped into the doorway, keeping the chain lock still hooked. Behind me, Noah's laughter echoed faintly from his bedroom. He was stacking his toy cars again, humming off-key to a cartoon tune. That sound, that fragile little joy, reminded me exactly who I was protecting. Mom's eyes flicked toward the sound. He's okay. He's alive, I said flatly. Something you didn't want. Her chin quivered. Don't say that. We didn't mean, like you said, let him die. I cut in, every word landing like glass on tile. You said he ruined your life. You said I wasn't worth saving. That wasn't a heat of the moment slip. That was honesty. You finally said what you always thought. She took a shaky breath, gripping the envelope tighter. We lost the house, Claire. Your father, he gambled the retirement funds. We're broke. The bank's freezing everything. I thought maybe you could help us just until we get back on our feet. I stared at her for a long moment. There was a time when that sentence would have gutted me. The daughter, desperate for her parents' love, would have found a way to rescue them, thinking maybe this time they'd see her as family. But not anymore. Do you know what this is, Mom? I asked quietly, stepping aside just enough for her to see inside the apartment. The small dining table with one birthday balloon still tied to a chair, the crayon drawings on the wall, the little boy's blanket folded neatly on the couch. This is peace. It's small, it's quiet, but it's ours, and you don't get to walk in and poison it. Her voice cracked. We're your parents. No, I said softly. You're the people who taught me what not to become. She blinked rapidly as if waiting for me to change my mind, to reach out. But I didn't. I reached behind the door and pulled out a folded hospital bell, the one I'd kept as a reminder. This is what mercy looked like for you, I said, holding it up. When I begged for help, you laughed. When I screamed for my son's life, you watched. So now, when you beg, I'll do exactly what you did. Her voice shrank to a whisper. Please. I tilted my head to no, and I closed the door. She stayed there for a while. I could hear her crying softly on the other side, but I didn't move. I just stood there, my hand on the doorknob, breathing deeply until the sound faded down the hall. That night, I tucked Noah into bed. His small hand reached out to hold mine. Mom, he mumbled sleepily. Are you sad? I smiled through tears. No, baby. I'm just done being hurt. He smiled back, his eyes closing. Good. You're strong. After he drifted off, I sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker. Somewhere out there, my parents were learning what silence feels like. The kind that burns when you finally realize love isn't guaranteed. Days turned into weeks. I heard from relatives that Dad tried calling, that they were living in a rundown motel. They said Mom kept asking if I'd forgiven them yet. I hadn't, and maybe I never would. But forgiveness wasn't what I was after anymore. See, revenge doesn't always need fire or noise. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's the peace they never wanted you to have. The kind that reminds them every day of what they threw away. Months later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, just my mother's handwriting. Shaky, uncertain. Inside was a single sentence. We finally understand what mercy costs. I stared at it for a long time, then folded it neatly and placed it in a drawer beside Noah's old hospital bracelet. Not out of forgiveness, but closure. Because the woman they once mocked, the daughter they once called worthless, had built something stronger than their cruelty. And the sound of their begging was the only apology I ever needed.